Thanks, Krista, and well, good afternoon, morning, Worth and Wellness very quickly becoming a global brand, which is terrific. The Women Worth and Wellness initiative focuses on boomer women and their daughters, their health and wealth, and health is mental health as well as physical health, net worth and self-worth, philanthropy, and legacy planning. And this whole series, the theme that we chose heading into the year, we wanted to start right off the bat, focusing on daring and caring women leaders for positive impact. And all the way along, our speakers so far have been sharing their stories, which is amazing. And my new favorite word for 2023, which I'm hoping will come forward to each of you participating today, is illuminate. When you hear these two women today share their stories, I hope you're illuminated and inspired to step up with your own unique ability and make a huge contribution, not just in your own world, but in the whole world. I also want to thank Crystal, who's done an exceptional job. I'm in Ontario, she's in Alberta, and she really puts all this content and technology together in such a way that this is all possible. So Crystal, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Stay healthy. Can't do it without you. And we also have Paul Chapman, who is with RBC, and he's the sponsor, which is the reason why these events are no charge. Paul won a big award with RBC. So as we speak or as we listen, he is on an executive cruise. Way to go, Paul. How come Crystal and I didn't come with you? Anyway, Paul, maybe you want to say a few words about Women Worth and Wellness and why you are a sponsor.
Well, thank you. No, I won't. I'll keep this short. I'm in Cozumel for the day, so we're on this cruise for 5 days. So, but I'm happy to be able to join. I wouldn't miss it. And on that note, we had RBC was the title sponsor for an evening with Lisa Laflemme last week, which a number of us went to. I was happy to host with Nancy a number of women. It was an excellent event, very inspiring and very timely that we're doing this on parallel to that. So I'm happy to certainly happy to be supporting this initiative and having wonderful speakers like Nancy's been able to line up. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, Crystal, over to you, and look forward to hearing from Carolynn, who's in South Africa, and Desiree, who is in Calgary.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nancy and Paul. So we'll start you off with our first speaker today. Her name is Carolynn Chalmers. Did I say that right? Carolynn has spent the last 20 years, Chalmers, pardon me. Carolynn has spent the last 20 years assisting leaders and leadership teams to understand and apply governance principles and generate value for their organizations. She has extensive management and governance experience and has held various board committee, and executive roles for international listed private and public organizations. And she's going to speak to you today. I can't wait to hear from you. Carolynn, please join us.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you so much, Nancy, for reaching out and inviting me here today. I am so honored to be in this room, virtual room, with all of these lovely ladies and gents. It's such a fabulous opportunity, so thank you for that. And Paul, for the sponsorship, I really appreciate that. I guess my story started way back when I was just a little girl, about 6 or 7, in the old South Africa, the pre-democratic South Africa, when my parents were both activists and I was just a little girl, not really daring or caring and not really having an influence, but our phones were tapped. And so when my parents heard the classic click come on the call, they would send me in to sing childhood songs like Happy Birthday and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I did my bit. So I was really taught way back then that it doesn't matter how young, disempowered, inconsequential you think you are, you can actually have a big influence in things and in life. And that was it really stood me in good stead in moving forward. I was, of course, being white in South Africa, I lived a privileged upbringing. even though we were involved in obviously trying to right the wrongs that had been provided or done to the majority of the people in our country. And in that privileged life, I was able to access one of the first computers in South Africa, and it was an old Apple II, and I'm sure there was even pre-Apple IIe. And there, when I was only in grade 8, I wrote a computer system that was a mark recording system for the school, and I sold it to the education department, and that was my first sale. I was probably a young teenager then. Just still in my first years of my senior years of high school. So they kind of getting that daring and caring through to not only reduce the overhead of the teachers in the school of having to handwrite all of the school reports, but also getting into the daring bit of launching out into as an entrepreneur. So that was really my upbringing. I got very involved in zoology and in nature conservation, and I found myself working in the Natal Parks Board in the wildlife area. And when I could eventually, I bought myself an old, what we call in South Africa as a bakkie. Bakkie is really, in Australia, they call them utes or utility vehicles, which has an empty back to a twin cab, and it was a single cab in the front with a single seat, a single long seat. And there I used to take this bakkie into the wildlife areas around in the northern, close to the Mozambican border, on my own, just relishing the wildlife around me, sleeping on the back, under the stars. I just absolutely loved it. And I think that's really where in times like that, I feel that us as women, we're so community oriented and family oriented. It's good for us to get some time alone to be able to sit and reflect and understand all that much bigger picture that we are just a little part of, even though we feel ourselves being daring and being larger than life. We really are a small cog in a very, very, very big system, but we all need to play our part and be very important parts that we play, especially as women, because we are connecting and we are communing with so many more people of diverse generations. But let me fast forward into my my career. I actually did zoology at university, computer science, of course, and I went into systems thinking, applied mathematics, setting fisheries, renewable resources, total allowable catches, really working in the mathematical space. And I remember worked for the International Whaling Commission for a little while. And in the International Whaling Commission, we had a big, there was a moratorium on whaling, and the Japanese delegation came out to Cape Town in South Africa, and we hosted them. And I was, of course, doing the statistical analysis of these whale populations. My thesis was on humpback whales off Australia and New Zealand. And the Japanese delegation couldn't believe that I was doing the computer coding because I was a woman. And in Japan in those days, women just weren't coders. They didn't work in the field. So that was really quite unusual. And it was quite, I felt good representing women. And that came through again when I was appointed as the Chief Information Officer, or the CIO of a very large investment company. In fact, the oldest Black economic empowerment company in the country as an investment company. The company called Tebe Investment Corporation was founded by essentially those that were put away in Robben Island, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, all of the well-known names in the struggle. They founded Tebe Investment Corporation, and I was super delighted to be asked to be their group chief information officer. And it was wonderful working there. The chair at the time, or the CEO, Buzi Kanyile, Buzi was a very well-known activist. In fact, he was the finance director for the African National Congress at the time. So, and then of course, when a democratic South Africa happened, he went on to be essentially manage this investment on behalf of the ANC stalwarts. It was lovely working with him because there were two of us really, or three of us in the C-suite, the group financial director, myself as the information and operations, and Vusi as the chair and essentially networker. Vusi has a very commercial heart, but a very social caring side. And it was unusual working with both the FD as well as the CEO to almost see this, it's almost a two-headed snake, seeing the really socialistic feel come through, but also this commercial drive for returns. So it was a great lesson learned for me. It was also where I cut my teeth on governance, because in being in the C-suite of an investment company, we were buying and selling companies and doing turnarounds. And in the buying and selling of companies and having to do the turnaround, I was sitting not a manager, not an employee of the company, and not even on the board, but I'm having to tell this organization what to do. So working with the board and through the board, setting parameters around, well, governance practices really, around what the right things are for that organization to do to ensure growth and sustainability. And learning those lessons learned was very, very difficult. Having been a manager and a doer myself, to hands off, allow other people to do, and then just to guide. Real lesson learned. And it was through that process that I got to meet with Professor Mervyn King. Professor Mervyn King founded, he's the namesake of South Africa's corporate governance codes, the King reports. And at that point, the third version, in fact, I must just digress a little bit. It was really Nelson Mandela's brainchild to bring South Africa back onto the global economic stage, to bring in good corporate governance principles. And that's really how we got good corporate governance into the country in our first corporate governance report. It was so successful that Professor King was asked to go to the United Nations to help there in terms of governance. Anyway, the third King report was incorporating information technology and putting IT on the boardroom table. And of course, having with my background in IT and being a chief information officer in IT, let me digress another one. I was invited by, well, one of those large international software firms, right? You know the one. And we were all invited to go to an opening ceremony of some new software that was being launched. And we went across to Zambia, we went to the Victoria Falls, everybody was invited. And of course, they handed out the corporate gifts, and I was one of two women there, and the corporate gifts were, you know, the hunting jacket that was 5 sizes too big, because yes, we were only 2 women in this whole camp full of men, because female chief information officers, IT people, were just not well known. So I really harp back on when I was a child, and I was given that opportunity to, it doesn't matter how small you are, how inconsequential you feel you are, you can still have a big impact. So going back to the launch of the third King report, King 3, incorporated IT governance and really put it on the boardroom table as something that needed to be done. And that has subsequently been adopted in pretty much all governance codes around the world, as information technology is something that the board of directors remains responsible and accountable to their organizations for, is the organization's information technology. Of course, not at a detailed level, of course, setting the right principles and the right things to do. From Tebe, we became very successful. We weren't doing little acquisitions anymore and turnarounds. We became large, large listings, etc. And it became a little boring for me, I must admit. So I decided to take on a new challenge. And how can I use these things that I've learned, these tools in my hands? And I went to an international organization that was actually operating in the US. And there we had to do a big turnaround, a different strategy enablement. We launched into 3 new states, completely new product sets in the space of 9 months. And people were absolutely flabbergasted about how I could do this. And for me, it seemed, well, it's second nature. I'm just applying good governance principles. And what is the trick to governance? Really, it's about transparency, everybody having certainty, knowing where they are, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it, and what's expected from them. And I equate it to sending children to school. So you send children to school and they have to go to school. It's a compliance requirement, but you don't want them to just go to school because they must go to school. You want them to go to school to do their best, to live their best lives. So that, as we see, is a level beyond just complying. It's doing your best. And I like to see governance as that, is not just complying with the minimum socially acceptable, but actually doing your best. And I like to think that as organizations, we want our organizations to do the same. We want our organizations to not just comply, and comply they should, not just comply, but actually do their best socially, do their best environmentally, and use governance, good governance, to do that. So that's why this acronym ESG, environment, social governance, actually resonates for me, because this is moving beyond just compliance and moving into the governance space and leveraging not just those resources that you have at your disposal financially, but also those resources that the world has at their disposal. So I've circled around and worked in the US company, worked in several other organizations in the C-suite level, doing turnarounds and applying these good governance principles, to the point where, as life happens, I circled around and Professor Mervyn King singled me out and asked me to come and help him as the chief executive of his newly formed Good Governance Academy. The Good Governance Academy really is giving voice to thought leaders around the world on critical business issues. And the critical business issues we speak about are, well, they're governance related, but of course it's talking about corporate reporting, the climate crisis. We had a fireside chat with Chad Holliday, chairman of Shell at the time. We've had lovely discussions with various people, and those are all publicly available and online and on YouTube as a public good. But as this happens, that was in 2019, and in 2020, the pandemic hit. So we had a lovely little group of 150 people in Johannesburg in 2019, thinking we were doing very well. And 2020 hit, we had to go online. Suddenly now, today, 3 years later, we're sitting in 135 countries. We have 5 million people that we network with and connect with. And last year, we just launched our ESG exchange. And the ESG exchange is a knowledge exchange specifically on matters broader than just critical business issues, but critical issues that impact business, the economy, as well as society and the environment, because the triple context of the economy, society, and the environment is what keeps us sustainable. And that's what, of course, sustainable development is all about. So that was a whistle stop, Crystal, on my story and who I am. Maybe just to say I'm a mother of 3 and a stepchild, so mother of 4. They're all grown up. They are last one's going through university, and not hoping for any grandchildren in the near future. Just a little bit about me. Thanks, Crystal.
I don't think you have any time for grandchildren.
Good.
You're just, I loved, you're super delighted. And it just seems that one thing has led to another and has led to another. You've enjoyed every step of the way. And when opportunities have come your way, you did not hesitate to really step up and take on even more. Good Governance Academy, we have, I think, a lady on here today. If she's not on, she'll get a copy of this, and is one of our presenters next week. And her business is all about getting more women on board. So I know she'll want to connect with you. Her name is Deborah Rosati, and is doing a super job, really super. The other comment that I will make is I had no idea that Nelson Mandela had such a significant strategy to build the economy through good governments. I mean, how smart is that? Really, really
Absolutely.
smart.
And it was just one of his many.
Yes, one of his many is right. Okay, well, Crystal, I'll let you introduce Desiree, and then we'll still have some time for others to ask their questions later on. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yes, absolutely. And Carolyn, if you could put your information in the chat, if you would like people to connect. So that would be your LinkedIn and or website information, so people could find out more about you. Fantastic. All right, on to our next fabulous speaker today. We have Desiree. Desiree Bombenon has over 30 years of business operational experience and strategic leadership. She was awarded RBC's Women's Entrepreneur for 2020, Ernst & Young 2019 Entrepreneur of the Year for the Prairies in Communication Technology. She is a bold innovator, futuristic, and purpose-driven leader. Her portfolio includes business strategy, social enterprise, and culture building. Amongst many, many other things, I could go on and on. I can't believe the amount of awards and accolades that you have. Desiree, please, would you join us here today and tell us more about you and the wonderful things you're up to?
Thank you so much, Crystal and Nancy. Thanks for having me here, and thank you to RBC and Paul for sponsoring today. Carolyn, what a great message, what a great story, what important work you're doing with ESG Exchange, and you know, just all the work in sustainability. I do a lot in ESG and sustainable business as well, so it's exciting and wonderful to hear what you're up to. Yeah, my title also is Chief Disruption Officer. I think Crystal might have mentioned that, and that's there to remind me that my job is also to make sure that we never get comfortable. Status quo, of course, is the enemy of progress, and I just feel like we should always be a little bit uncomfortable with what we're doing, and that tells us that you are stretching boundaries and barriers, and you know, just going beyond the day-to-day. And just to set the record straight, I co-founded SureCall, my company, with my partner, my husband. And as I love to tell everybody, I did all the work. So now he's my ex-husband. Not uncommon in business. I feel like I have to share some of my early story so that you understand a little bit about who I am and what my truth is. And like many of you, you know, women entrepreneurs, our story is one of hardship. And I want you to remember that though the story is one of hardship, it's also a story of resilience and a story of bravery and a story of happiness too. And I think, you know, we can all, that resonates probably with many, many more of us than we'd like to say. I immigrated to Canada when I was 3 years old, and I've lived in Calgary ever since, pretty much my whole life. My mom was a super hard worker, an immigrant. She worked literally day and night to feed 5 of us, 5 kids. She worked as a seniors caregiver in the day and a janitor at night. My father, on the other hand, did not work at all. He was an alcoholic. He was very abusive. He spent most of his time doing one of 2 things, either sleeping off his drunk from the day, or unfortunately abusing my mom or the kids. We lived in poverty and we moved often, and that moving children when they're at a very young age is never a good thing, especially if you move them as often as I was moved. I never had a chance to really make any friends, like real true friends, and I was bullied a lot being the new kid in school, but also because, you know, it was the 70s and 80s, and you know, I was made fun of because of the color of my skin and because we were poor. Lunch for school, my mom packed was usually, you know, a slice of bread with a thin scrape of butter folded over. And when she had payday, it was, you know, we got something extra, like a little sprinkle of sugar on the bread. It was a way of life. And I often went to school with, you know, cuts and bruises, and that most teachers ignored, you know, sort of making up their own stories in their heads about what might have happened, except one teacher. And I think that's something that we can, again, all relate to, is, you know, that one teacher that was that teacher that understood. that one teacher that took some time and spent some time with you. And I believe there's something significant about the age of 8 and the impact of experiences at that age, but also the impact of a really good teacher. And she would come to me and sit beside my desk and say, hey, don't worry. One day, things will get better. You can be anything you want. You can have everything you need. And you just have to be patient and you have to stay strong. And those words have literally stayed with me through my life, through my crucibles, challenges, and difficulties. And I use it as a mantra, stay strong. And I use it with my team and my family and my kids. At 11 years old, I was strong enough to have my father arrested. And that was good because it gave our family the opportunity to get away from that situation and to move away with it. When I turned 14, my mother remarried to a wonderful man that she's still with today. However, at 14, I was still struggling from childhood trauma and I was acting out. So, I can tell you, I was a very difficult teenager. I ended up leaving home when I was 15. I was homeless for 2.5 years. Living on the streets and barely making it day to day. I had 2 kids by the time I was 21 years old, and I worked 3 jobs to take care of them. I eventually started a job full-time at a communications company and then basically grew up in that company. At 30, the hits don't stop. I was diagnosed with lupus and I was unable to, at one point, I was unable to move or walk. Without my body being in terrible pain. And I was originally misdiagnosed, so my medications weren't working for over a year. I walked with a cane, and finally I was able to get on the right meds, and I started a slow mend and healing. So I've lived with lupus ever since, and I made it a mission to not let it keep me down. I eat healthy, I work out, but most importantly, I work on my self-care and mental health. Something I think women do not take enough time to do is to look after themselves, their health, their mental health, most of all. In 2012, our company was struggling and my partner was the CEO at that time, and he hired a president that was not working to the best benefit of the organization. There were some cultural issues. He worked with blinders on. It was about hierarchy. It was all about profit and making money and, not really focused on the team and the things that create a healthy company. The company was failing, and I told my partner that I would come in and take it on, but only as the CEO and as a founder with a clean start. So we closed the other company and incorporated SureCall in 2013. I bought into the company at that time as a shareholder. I knew I had to change the culture. And so I started to work on this massive endeavor of a culture shift within a team of disengaged people. My position was people before profit and a purpose-driven organization. So during that time, back to my lupus, it's an autoimmune deficiency, by the way, and my immune system thinks that the tissues in my body are a foreign substance and they continue to attack it. So my medication suppress my immune system, and therefore I'm at a high risk for infections and viruses like COVID. In 2016, after a trip to Greece, I contracted a strain of strep B that infected my sciatic nerve, and I spent 6 months in the hospital. During that time in the hospital, the nurses would find me doing payroll in bed and shake their heads, but my controller had left to South Africa for an extended time away. And just before my trip to Greece, he was unable to come back and do payroll. So, that's life as a business owner. You do what you have to do. Sometimes you just have no choice. I finally left the hospital. I had a pick in my heart and a portable antibiotic dispenser, and I used a walker for the next couple of months, then crutches and a cane, and finally got back to my normal self. So you see these challenges come and they continue to come. I mean, sometimes we're waiting for that time where everything is going to work smoothly and there's never going to be a hiccup in business or in life. I think all of us would be waiting a long time. I mean, you might have a stretch, but then something always happens. And I think, you just have to keep taking that high road and thinking positively, and things will come around for you. I've been to that edge a number of times and looked down, and it's frightening. So I chose to look far out instead. To me, life is a series of choices, right? And you live with the choices that you make. back to culture, and how does it happen? Well, in the hospital, I realized all things take time to heal, so not overnight. So on an average, to change a culture in an organization, it takes 5 to 7 years to truly change a company's culture and its beliefs. It's not just changing one or two things, it's kind of changing everything. And it's changing how people see and view things. Change can be the inhibitor or the catalyst for progress. Most people, of course, don't like change. They like to be comfortable knowing each day is going to be the same. And there are no surprises, right? That makes it simple. That makes it easy. But in order for a company to grow, it has to change. So how do you get people to rise to that challenge and to accept that change is normal and change is good? Not just for the company, but for them individually as well. Well, you have to show them some progress. Communication is a big part of progress and something that took us a long time to establish. It's important that your leadership team knows communication is part of their role. If they know things, but they don't want to let anybody else know, that's the gap that you create between your vision and execution. Culture also is more than having core values. It's a necessary and empowering part of your objectives and goals. Culture is a strategy, and that's how I utilize it. Once people are engaged and understand a clear vision, they will truly become the foundation and success of your company. A key learning for me was that communication is you have to be 100% honest and transparent no matter what. I was keen on communication, especially when it came to good news. I love to tell the team good news and often kind of left the bad news out. I had no idea that the impact of not sharing everything was going to have a negative impact or effect on the morale of the team. In reality, it gives them a false sense of contentment, and it ends up becoming a ticking time bomb. So today, my organization, we're completely transparent with our team. And although it's not always fun and some truly tough conversations have to be had, I would much rather function knowing my whole team is aware when we have an issue. So I have the support and the real commitment to get the problem solved. What's as important as what you do is what you don't do, right? So when creating culture, the number one on the do not do list is don't break promises. When implementing programs for our team, like incentives or bonuses, many times we fail to deliver or follow through. And after a few months, the program would just stop. Other priorities got in the way, but building an open and transparent organization means leadership is going to have to listen and act on the team's feedback, contributing to the most important piece of culture, which is trust. To me, trust is a legal performance enhancing drug. It truly, truly provides your team the comfort and the opportunity to be their best selves without worrying about any of the what ifs. Your team has to believe and your leadership has to be authentic. And being an entrepreneur is hard work. It is the hardest job you will ever have. And you will at some point question why you chose that path. Get used to the sleepless nights and unexpected challenges. Women entrepreneurs were the hardest hit during the COVID pandemic. And why? Because we are everything to everyone. And when things shut down, we took off our business hat and we put on our nurturing hats. We took care of our kids, we took care of our parents, we set down our dreams. Women sacrifice, but that's also why we make some of the best entrepreneurs, because we do what it takes without a second thought. And we do it for others, not just for ourselves. It's our greatest strength. As I mentioned, culture is a strategy. And when you have the right culture and the right team, you can do just about anything. So I mentioned it takes about 7 years to build a culture. Well, it takes approximately 7 days to destroy one. So having the right team to take your message across is critical to your organization's success. A great mentor of mine always said, hire very slow, but fire very fast. When you have the wrong person in your organization, you all know this. It can spread negativity so quickly. It's like a fire in a dry forest. My company is a purpose over profit entity. I truly believe that you can do well by doing good, and being purpose-driven does not mean that you're not profitable. In 2016, I designed the Good Call program that we pitched to clients, where they agreed to donate 2% of their invoices to causes associated with our program. Today, that framework has been totally integrated into our business model, and we do 2% of our top line revenue regardless, not the profit, the top line revenue, to fund this program that many charitable causes locally, nationally, and internationally benefit from, including our Hero Girls program, which is a program that empowers and educates females in underserved and developing communities. Today, the program is in its third year. Actually, we just completed our third year, and we have expanded now to fighting human trafficking in the most affected regions in the world. So what has this done? It's created an ethos within our organization that allows us to utilize our business as a force for good and create a team that is engaged in meaningful work. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but our business is also a certified B Corporation, which is very difficult to do in the BPO space. We're one of only 2 in the world in that space. This comes in really handy, all of this engagement work, especially when you have a pandemic and issues like the Great Resignation. I call it the Great Revelation. Not the Great Resignation, because it's a revelation not only for individuals working in organizations, but for corporations, that they finally understand that their employees want better and deserve better. Corporate culture and a purpose-driven environment are 2 key pieces of the why behind employee retention and happiness. When you're able to deliver a great workplace environment, offer flexibility for life-work balance with compensation that allows people to enjoy their lives and not just pay the bills, that's the start of creating a place that people want to be. And those are going to be the minimum requirements. For organizations that believe the Great Resignation was created by government interference or that it will dissipate with the passing of the pandemic, you're going to find yourself in a very challenging position on the talent front going forward. The future of work has changed forever. And that is just the baseline. If you truly want to create sustainable teams, then you have to provide them a much more ambitious goal than being profitable. You have to give them a reason to stay. We're moving from doing the next thing right to doing the next right thing. The old way of doing business is shifting. And as Carolynn spoke to, ESG, all those things, in order for long-term future sustainabilities, companies have to think and act differently. Moral leadership is when people feel the leader is worthy of the journey that they're making with them. There are no shortcuts. Keep your promises and be authentic. I'll end with just some of my biggest lessons that I've learned. Number 1, let go of your ego. As an entrepreneur and a performance-driven individual, it's normal to have an ego. After all, you need something to drive your results. However, you need to keep it in check and treat people as your equals. Over time, I've realized as well, we all do that. You can't do it alone, right? We all work together. But before you ask people to come along with you, you have to have their trust. And remember, people are not loyal to organizations, they're loyal to other people. So moral or servant leadership is a real thing. And if you don't like the term servant, think supportive leadership, empowering leadership, enabling leadership. This is how you support your team to success. As a leader, one critical skill you must possess is an ability to stay calm in crisis and thrive under pressure. When things start to get challenging, everyone depends on you. And maybe as a last thing, being a successful entrepreneur is not easy. The scars we bear are the roadmap of the journey to where we are today. And I think that those scars are beautiful. They are unique to you and they expose all your superpowers to the world. Dreams are just the prequels to the manifestation of what you are truly capable of doing. So dream big and stay strong. Thanks so much.
Dream big and stay strong. Exactly. I think, some key points, Desiree, that I really want to highlight. First of all, I was so impressed when I heard your story about being an 11-year-old and calling your dad out. I mean, that in itself took incredible courage. But you saw the effect that he was having on your whole family, especially your mom. I can only imagine you being an observer to that kind of behavior and then having the courage to step up. I love your comments about business as a force for good, doing for others, not just ourselves. I think that's a really, really, really important point because in this world, it isn't just about us. It is about us as a vehicle to make a difference for others. And in doing so, having that positive impact that goes beyond just that simple behavior. Trust, of course, goes without saying. And once trust is lost, oh my goodness, it's never coming back. So it's a very, very fragile commodity. This whole series was really created with the focus on mental health and mindset. We want people to have a positive mindset in terms of stepping up the way you've done in so many times, to keep on going and know that you're not doing it alone. Like, there are other people who will help you, but keep on going, like really keep on going. And for everybody who's listening, make sure you sign on to these amazing women on LinkedIn, because they post whenever they want to post. It isn't like you're interfering with their lives. You're just linking into, what they're saying. Our first series had Lisa Gable from the US, and Karen, who I know well, said, how long have you known Lisa and where did you meet her? I said, she and I are new best friends on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is there for us all to access. So those are my points that I really wanted to reinforce. And actually, one other that I heard on the weekend was, you rest, you rust. So don't rest because you don't want to rust. So Crystal, over to you for some comments about any questions we might have for people to ask.
Fabulous. Thanks, Nancy. I just want to say a couple other enlightening comments that came. Karen says, hire slow and fire fast. Yes, I agree with that. A great tip. And not always something as women in business are good at. And I concur, that is true. Probably want to resolve things or see if they can figure things out, but it's best to cut the snake off at the head if that is needed. Second quote, status quo is the enemy of progress. And Desiree's presentation is so insightful, and so was Carolyn. So thank you so much. I have a question for both of you, and I'll start with Carolyn. Carolyn, what would you tell your 20-year-old self if you knew then what you know now?
What did I tell my 20-year-old self? So I would like to say, don't be scared. But I think I had too much courage that was good for me when I was 20, but just maybe a little misdirected and misguided. So perhaps what I shouldn't say is don't be scared, but rather don't be scared to ask questions and to ask for guidance. I think we feel as 20-year-olds that we are big and bold and brave and we can do it on our own and we know best. But what I would like to say is, it's not be scared, but don't be scared, but don't be scared to ask your peers and those around you for some guidance and for some help.
Perfect. Desiree, how about you? What would you tell 20-year-old Desiree? You told 11-year-old Desiree a lot. So what about 20?
Oh, 20-year-old Desiree. Geez, I was just, pregnant when I was 20. I would just say don't, exactly that. I mean, I don't think the book was out yet, maybe. Don't sweat the small stuff. Like it would, just worrying constantly about worrying doesn't change anything. In fact, worrying often creates more stress and harm than it does good. So if you're in a situation, deal with the situation and, just take it step by step and get through it. It's already there. So worrying about it is not going to help. It's just going to increase your anxiety. And I think that's what I would tell myself. I would also tell myself, because I know what's happening now, I would say, hey, don't worry, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be great. And in fact, you're going to help a lot of people just like you. And I think that would have given me some more courage.
I'm Crystal, the Women Worth in Wellness, the cornerstone to the whole initiative. I was a wealth advisor when I created this, because people get all caught up about return on investment and yada, yada, yada. But we all know if you don't have your health, you're not going anywhere anytime soon. So comment, both of you, on mental health and mindset. How do you keep yourself mentally strong And how do you keep that mindset positive so that you can keep on going, not just for yourself, but in being a role model to all the people that are observing you and surrounding you?
Let Desiree go first.
Okay. I do a lot of things. I do a lot of meditation. I do yoga, at least 3 or 4 times a week. I also surround myself with positive people. One of the things that I have often told my kids is you are the mean average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you're spending time with people who are constantly negative and bitter and judgmental and awful, you become the mean average of those 5 people. So create a group, a community of people who are positive, doing good things, influential, and are inspirational. And that's what you will become. And that's what I do, is I surround myself with fantastic people who are always lifting each other up and being positive. And I can then in turn, gratefully offer that to people around me as well.
Excellent.
That's
Thank you.
lovely. This is my bruise. I'm not good at this. I sprint the marathon. I live in my head. I forget my body. I'm very bad with relationships. I tend to be the speedboat and leave others in my wake. And it's not a good thing. And it trips you up. It certainly doesn't take you far, very fast. It feels like it, but my hard lesson learned in life is to exactly what Desiree was saying, is to live in your body and not only in your mind, to live in community and not only on your own. But when I'm growing up, I loved living on my own. It was comfortable, it was safe, but it's the reaching out and living together, which I think takes you further, faster. And I think that's listening to Desiree and people like Desiree talk about just living more broadly and the mental health associated with your physical health, really take that to heart, although I'm not always very good at practicing it, Nancy. I don't know, maybe let's ask you.
Well, the one thing, and I say this often, I think community is so important. And obviously you need to pick the right community or communities so that you are illuminated and you are inspired. But the 2 qualities that I have for people who I spend time with are generosity and a sense of humor. So if you spend time with people who are humorless, that doesn't last for very long. And if you spend time with people who are not generous, now that doesn't mean from a financial standpoint, it just means in so many ways, if they have a generous spirit, then that in itself to me is positive behavior that goes a very, very, very long way, very long way. And I've often said that to people. I just was invited to be an incoming president for the Rotary Club that I just joined. And the president of Rotary International is a Canadian. So that was one of the reasons why I was attracted to it. But one of the reasons why I accepted membership in this club is because they have a terrifically generous spirit, welcoming, folding you in. I'm new. And, that to me makes all the difference in the world when people behave with that sort of an attitude. Enough about me. Crystal, any more questions?
Absolutely. We like learning about you too, Nancy. I do have a question. What would you say to women starting late in entrepreneurship? How can you start cultivating success? Or what's the secret to success if you're starting late? Desiree, we'll start with you.
I don't even know how to answer that because I don't believe in late, right? Start when you start, just start. And I know so many entrepreneurial women that are starting in their 50s and 60s. And, it's funny, if a man starts another business in his 50s or 60s, nobody says anything. They think, oh, he's blossoming from his previous experience and, that sort of thing. And if a woman starts at a later age, it's kind of like, what are you doing? But I think most female entrepreneurs do start in the later years, because generally they're starting families, and they end up at home with kids and whatnot during a certain period of time where they start and have to stop, that sort of thing. I say go for it. I don't think there's an age limit to when you can go out there and start up.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I think older women are more equipped to dealing with the toughness that comes with a corporate life and being an entrepreneur in a capitalistic society. I think older women are, and this is completely underestimated in my opinion, and I often see it, as older women have learned how to deal with all different types of people. They've dealt with the tantruming babies, and when I say tantruming babies, they can be any age, and the teenagers and the herding cats, and you've had to do it all. And whether you've had children or not, you've been exposed to having to do that. So I think as an older female entrepreneur, you've got a lot going for you, a lot more than if you were young. So it's not about the energy that maybe a younger person has. When you're older, you've really got a street cred that you don't know that you've got, and leverage that. So I hats off to women who start the entrepreneurial journey in their older age.
I was at WPO conference, Women Presidents Organization, a few years ago. One of the guest speakers was Marty Bartoletta out of Chicago, and she did a whole study on primetime women, which are aged 50 to 70, so post-family, post-menopause, and it's like, I've still got lots of moxie, and that often is when women start a new business. And when I heard a presentation, I realized my mother was 43 when I was born. She started her business when she was 51. But what I then realized was I grew up under a primetime woman. So you have that influence of, would somebody please deal with that noise, because I've got to get on with my business. I don't have time for more. So, I agree with Desiree, like, you just start. If that's what you want to do, you just start and go for it. And again, no rest, no rust. Keep going. Any other questions, Crystal?
Last question, it's a personal question. What do you have as suggestions for maybe the next generations as they're coming up? How do you balance everything? Desiree, you said you learned just from business, it was all work, and maybe that contributed to partly the divorce. So how do you balance everything in life and have the success you want in business, in life, in relationships, and family, all of the many hats that women wear?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I think that for young and mature women that are starting out, I think that you just have to prioritize yourself and your family as much as you prioritize your business. I think we make the mistake of thinking that in order to have a successful business, we have to be in it like constantly all the time. And I think what you have to do is actually schedule. Like, I actually schedule time in my calendar to walk my dog and to have dinner with my kids. And so just really act as if your personal life and your business life are one thing. I know that people say, well, you got to separate the two so that you spend all your you're right in it when you're with your family and you're right in it with your business. I get that separation, but I think also, in order for you to create the priority of your own personal life, you have to hold it up there at the same level as you do your business. Because going back to what Nancy said about mental health and physical health, if you don't take care of these things, and part of your mental health is getting that love that you need from your community and the people around you, right? You need that. And that is what's going to help you to be a great leader in your organization and a great business person. So I think it's about treating it as equal in your mind and not making the business the priority. It has to be both.
Excellent.
Yep, agreed. And I think there's nothing that beats passion. I just see when I'm happy and passionate and I'm full of energy, then my children are happy, the workers are happy. But as soon as I let myself go and just completely down, if I've already generated that positive energy, they're there to catch me, which I love. And it's maybe build stronger relationships, being able to show that vulnerability, because they know where I really want to be, and they know about they feel the passion that comes through. So I do say that you have to give up some things. You have to, as Desiree was saying, you have to prioritize. You have to do things you don't like, but with that vision and passion in mind. And if you've got that passion and you stick to that passion and you have that energy that you're spreading around with others, then when you don't have it, you've filled that bank account up so that you can rely on the support from others around you. A little bit off the topic, but I thought, for being an entrepreneur, passion is so, so important. If you're not passionate about what you do, you're not going to be able to drive through.
No. And I think it's a continual, because you're the person that sees and knows everything that's going on in your life. So it's a continual asking yourself, what do you want? What's important to you? And how do you move forward positively? Thank you both so much for all your presentations and input and inspiration and illuminations. I think, it was great to get to know you better, Carolynn, in South Africa, and Desiree for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your presentation again. It's just so amazing, both of you. For everybody who's here, we've got another event next week. And again, 2 more fabulous speakers. We have Deborah Rosati and Inez. I'm not going to say your last name, Inez, because I'll embarrass myself, but very impressive. A brain researcher talking about viruses, not just COVID, but viruses overall and how they impact our lives and some possible solutions for our good health going forward. And then on February the 6th, we have Karen and Lisa coming back, and it'll be a great event just to have an open forum about what did happen at Davos and what should we know about and what else is on our minds. We then have International Women's Day on March the 6th. Again, 2 great ladies. And then we have a boot camp in May. And the focus is very much on mind, body, spirit, focusing on cornerstone is mindset with a psychologist, and then a whole chunk on our health, our physical health and our mental health, a financial presentation to talk about philanthropy and all those sorts of things. And then a presentation from Women's College Hospital in Toronto on the research that they're doing and helping women age well, but along with everything else. So more details on all of that. So thank you again to our speakers. And Crystal, did you want to add on anything else?
Well, last thing is just that I put the link in the chat for next week's presentation. It is free, just like this one. Even if you can attend, we strongly encourage you to register and get the link, get the recording, and please share with your connections, your network. Last thing is that as soon as this meeting is over, a survey is going to pop up on your screen, and we're just going to ask you a couple of questions about what you thought of the meeting today. And if you have any suggestions for future topics, please, your feedback is very important to us. So just can you please take the 2 minutes time it does to 2 minutes time it takes to complete the survey. We'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and lovely to meet you, Desiree.
You as well. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye.